Hi everyone, let's talk about this. Edward Zwick's film Blood Diamond. It explores greed. Captain Poison is barbaric because of his greed, and De Beers turns a blind eye to slavery in its minds, and we can connect this. William Golding also explores humanity's greed in his novel. Lord of the Flies is similar because the boys don't care what they do to each other, just like Captain Poison. Let's talk about how we can help students who are writing those nonsensical sentences, incomplete sentences, all the things, a little nifty trick that involves some kinesthetic activity. Right, you need the backstory with this. So we all have these students, a lot of students who struggle with writing sentences that are grammatically correct, but also that make any sense at all. Now, I once had a student in year 12 who nothing I did nearly the whole year helped this student with his sentences. And what's more, he read and reread those sentences aloud, because that's my thing, right? So many times, and he just still couldn't hear that the sentences weren't making sense. So I'm sitting there one lunchtime and thought, yeah, this is actually my problem, not his, and I need to find a way to help him with this. So what I did was I took one of his digital pieces of work on a Word document, and hit enter twice at the end of each sentence, so that not only did each sentence start on a new line, there was actually a gap between them. So it comes off looking like this when you print it out. So I printed it out and then cut it into strips. So you get all these little strips like this. Now, I knew that the rest of the class was going to be carrying on with some other stuff anyway, so everyone was busy doing their own thing, so it was okay to do this as a one-off. So got our strips, shuffled them around so they're not in order, then gave them to, let's call this student Luke, in one of our little A4 trays from the reams of paper that we have, and said, okay, pick up each, this is from your writing, I want you to pick up each strip and read it. So there's no context there, right? He's just looking to see that each sentence makes sense. So he reads the first one, and it says, in his novel. Miss, that doesn't make sense. Well, I need the rest of the writing because I can't understand this sentence. Boom. Exactly, right? So that is how this little activity was born. And I've done it a few times since when I just can't get things across to students. And I tell you what, Luke got it after that. And I think, and I'll talk about this later as well, I think it's part of the fact that it's a physical thing. He's got these things physically. It's also to do with the fact that they're not in any order, and he gets to play with them. So it's sort of like this multi-dimensional reading activity worked a treat. So let's talk about how you could do this activity and how you could get the students to sort of do it for themselves. Now, obviously, you can do this yourself, especially if it's a one-off kind of student, special occasion. So it's okay to, put in a bit of the mahi yourself, bit of the work yourself, or you could get students to do it. So that's another way around it. Get the students to do it. Remember, they're just pushing enter so that they have each sentence on the next line, but also there's a space there. Now, when students do just do that part, they can see those sentences in more of an isolated way, just like that, and they start to pick out the sense or nonsensicalness of their sentences, just like this, and they don't need to go to the bother of printing out and cutting up. Or maybe they print out so they have something like this, but they don't need to cut it into strips, because it really jumps out at you just even at this stage. So that's one way around it. Get the students to do it. Another way of doing it, if you have got students writing in their books on refill or whatever, they're doing their writing there, you can just choose a section, or they could choose a section and get them to write, say, find some strips of paper, some scraps of paper, and they write each sentence, one on each piece of paper. Then they need to shuffle them though, like we did with these strips. They've got to shuffle the strips or the scraps of paper around so that they're not reading and assuming there's a context there. They've got to be looking at those sentences in isolation, so they can just copy these sentences over, one sentence per piece of paper. Good way to use up your scrap paper, and then read them like that. Another thing you can do, and it saves a whole lot of printing, unless you want to print out the hard copy of the story, is this. Get students to read from the last sentence up. So they read the last sentence of their paragraph or their text first, and then they read the next sentence up, and the next sentence, and the next sentence. I think it works like in it just as well as cutting the sentence strips, but you don't really get that kinesthetic activity. So I prefer that. The other thing I do is, and I'll put this on the screen as well, is it's quite hard to find the beginning of each sentence when you're reading up like that. So get students to just highlight the first word of each sentence first, and then they can easily jump up to the beginning of them. So, you know, you're starting with Lord of the Flies is similar because the boys don't care what they do to each other, just like Captain Poison, eh? And then the next sentence, in his novel. So you see, because it's not in order, I'm forced to think of those sentences in isolation. So that is a quick little tip, and I think it's just as effective as the little strips, but not as much fun because there's not the kinesthetic activity there. Okay, you've also got your two tried and tested methods that I'm always pushing as well. First of all, reading aloud, slowly and with expression. Senior students are the absolute worst at this because they go blah, 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 and they go really fast and they mumble and they don't hear what their writing sounds like in terms of sense, and also where the pauses and stops go. So that's really important, reading aloud, slowly and with expression. And our students just can't seem to do that now, and they need lots of practice in it, and it also needs lots of modelling. And the other thing, of course, is making sure that they understand, that your students understand that a complete sentence has a verb and a subject. And why do I say verb and a subject rather than subject and verb, which is what we normally say? Because it's easier to find the verb first, get them to find the verb first, and then go, okay, so now who is doing that action? So it's easier if you teach them verb and subject in every sentence. So those are the two tried and tested, but slightly less fun activities and not as boom hitting home. So keep those in mind though as well. I'll finish with this. I know that there is such pressure with time and getting through all of the content you need to get through during the year and the tiny bit of time that you have. Throw in, the winter tourney and life is just terrible in that regard. However, there are some things that affect everything, and writing correct sentences is one of them. So I think it's worth stopping for 1, 2, 3 periods to really nip some of these things in the bud, to teach those really key basic skills that you think should have been mastered years ago. And then it will feed into much more success later in the year, or throughout your year. Otherwise, you're just going to be bashing your head against the wall the whole year because it's going to be the same mistakes repeated all the time. So have a go at the sentence strips or any of the other activities. Drop a comment in the comments below if you do have a go at it. I'd love to hear your experience. I know that the sentence strips work really well for me and all my students, and the reading sentences from the bottom up also works really well. So go for it.